everybody! This is your favorite Foxy writer, Brandy Ackerley. We're here for the 38th chapter of my first novel, Hunter's Gambit. If I can be a bit honest, though, my heart kinda isn't in it today. Not because I don't like this chapter. No. It's, in fact, I really quite like the entire end of my book. No, it's because love is guiding my heart today. This is Yaimiko. She's a character from a video game that a friend of mine started playing last year called Genshin Impact. While she was begging me to join her on it, for most of that time, I stayed firm on refusing to play until they released their Not Japan update for Inazuma. Even then, despite the characters looking so gorgeous and the world being so gorgeous, I wasn't sold. Until they put Yaimiko in a commercial. First, the character is gorgeous. Elegant, beautiful, sophisticated. Oh, but with that grin that lets you just know she's going to be one hell of a troublemaker. Dressed like a shrine maiden. Oh, I fell in love with her. And that was even before anyone told me that she was a kitsune that created an entire publishing house to bring new novels and stories to her home of Inazuma. Oh, it's like they took everything a teenage me thought was amazing and cool and put it in a single character. Now, unfortunately, I joined and then found out that she hadn't yet been released to play. But yesterday that changed. She was finally released. But I don't stream until tonight, so I haven't been able to try and wish for her yet. I am so excited. I really wish I could speed up time to get there. Fortunately, if nothing else, and I mean, it is a lot more than nothing else, doing this video takes up some of my time until the show tonight. And hopefully I'll be back next week with the good news of me having gotten her. I mean, it is a gacha game after all, and free to play with no money to whale. Even if I wanted to, there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee. I can hope, though. I can hope. Anyways, though, thank you for letting me take a moment to gush about it. Now, in our last chapter, Kazunaha and Richard searched another room and found a pretty darn nifty sword that Kazuna immediately wanted to claim, and an awful lot of money, which Richard thought was most definitely the catch of the day. Now, on with the story. Okay. Now, just let me pull up the book here. Perfect. The final door was stuck solid, but Kazunaha was relieved that water hadn't come pouring out when Richard wedged the crowbar between the door and the frame. That had happened with the room before this one. Richard cracked his neck and grinned. We'll get back to it after. The ship most likely ran aground, and that was the room that took the most damage. I don't want us to fill the ship with water until we've done all we can first. And have what we were able to find off the ship, she confirmed. That too. If it's going to sink, I want everything of value off it first. They'd only found 6 vials of dye in the other rooms. It had hardly been worth exploring. All of the dolls, the clothing, all of the actual treasure had been destroyed by water and mold. There might be some in with the contraband items since they hadn't cleaned that out yet, but neither of them were confident that the treasure would have survived sitting in water all this time. She touched the hilt of the sword again. So, Richard, Kazunaha said, the sword, do you mind if I keep it? He glanced down at it. I thought you might. You haven't been willing to let go of it. Is it that obvious? She took a hold of the side of the door, and he grabbed hold of his. I don't mind. I prefer daggers to swords. We can discuss a price that we both feel is fair for it, and... The door cracked open, and a wave rushed out. Kazunaha grabbed for the stairway and narrowly missed being knocked over. Within moments, the water slid to a trickle, leaving a thin layer covering the floor. Richard growled and smacked at his pants. He'd grabbed the doorway to avoid being knocked over, but his pants all the way up to his waist were soaked. Kazunaha's clothes were also soaked, though. It was a small blessing that the water was warm. Richard grumbled, but gestured her to come near with the light. At least it didn't go out. He gagged, and a second later the thick scent of fishy rot assailed her nose. A hole big enough for a horse to walk through had ripped through the hull on the far side. Things floated in the water. The scent made every hair on her arm stand straight up. "Go back upstairs, Kazunaha," Richard whispered. She hadn't even had time to move when he stepped backward, bumping into her. "Richard? What's wrong? Why?" Richard leapt around her, dragging her towards the stairs. Her right leg burned with pain, and she shrieked, catching sight of a blue-green pincer claw, crab-like other than its immense size. She stared, dumbfounded, while the creature moved toward the door. The thick-shelled creature was taller than she, and appeared to hover, its 4 legs almost invisible in the gloom. It had 2 large pincers, and near its mouth dozens of smaller legs flapped. They were like fingerless hands, grabbing things in the water. Its mouth was tiny, filled with sharp teeth and purple flesh. She quivered, her stomach trying to empty itself. Its eyes were tiny and black, squinting at her from deep underneath its shell. It couldn't fit through the doorway, but that didn't stop the creature from striking out at her again. Richard pulled her away as the claw connected with the stairs instead of her, and nearly disintegrated the wood under its force. "Move that ass! Upstairs, now!" Richard shouted. She nearly tripped, he was pushing her so forcefully. As soon as they were upstairs, he slammed the door shut. Her ankle was burning and red with blood, dripping from a thin cut longer than her hand. She shivered and put some pressure on the wound, winding a length of cloth around it. The cloth sagged when she was done, but it would hold for now. "What can I do?" "It's not coming up through the door. Stay quiet. Move towards the center of the boat," he whispered. Kazunaha moved, but heard a discordant hum and scraping from over the side. One of her tutors had dragged his nails across a chalkboard once. This was worse. She put her hands over her ears and bent over, trying to block out the noise. "Kazunaha, what are you doing?" "That noise! It hurts," she said, shaking her head. "What noise?" Richard suddenly went stiff and pointed with one of his daggers. A claw had silently reached over the boat. It hung in the air like the incessant hum before the guardrail cracked as the creature yanked itself onto the deck. She didn't remember pulling out her dagger, but it was in her hand. "Hit anything fleshy that you can," Richard snarled, darting into the fray. Kazunaha's blade scored the creature's shell once and clattered against its thick armor covering the long legs. It seemed to ignore Richard, reaching out pincers the length of her arms to snip her in half. The creature reared, the undulating hum turning into a shriek. Richard yanked the knife from the creature's pale flesh between 2 flates on its underbelly. It turned, hissing threats at Richard, and she tried to catch one of its deep-set eyes. Her blade skittered off the shell and dug into one of the little scuttling arms near its jaws. It tore off when she ripped her blade out and sprayed her with a thick blue-gray mucus. It stank like rotten fish and iron. Bile rose in her throat, and the creature lowered itself, hiding its soft underbelly from them. It aimed to claw Kazunaha again, and the undulating hum lowered to a hiss. She leapt back, but the creature caught her shirt. It sliced open, and Kazunaha fell just out of its reach, her blade skittering across the rotten deck of the ship. The creature scuttled to her, forcing her to clamber after her weapon until she could grab it again with numb fingers. It had the reach here to be dangerous. She didn't. It clubbed her instead of spearing her. The force spun her around, and she blinked dumbly as her blade fell over the side of the ship. She hadn't even felt it come out of her hand. She swore under her breath and scampered back, catching the next claw that came for her. If she wanted to survive, she'd have to be faster and stronger than it was. Richard landed on its shell, throwing off one of the creature's attacks. His daggers came down on it, and she heard a thick crunch. Then Richard rolled away, and the creature hissed, rearing in pain. She needed another weapon. She hesitated to draw the wakizashi. Think. She was no hunter. She didn't know where its weak spots were. Obviously, its underbelly had less armor, but it would be luck, not skill, and to get a killing shot with it hiding so low to the ground. There had to be something she could do that wasn't just taking her weapon to it. Richard's voice rang out. Move! She jumped away from his voice as flames spread across the deck. She looked for the source and saw Richard's lamp shattered across the wooden floor. The broken glass sparkled like red diamonds in the firelight. The creature roared, nearly deafening her again. Unfortunately, the flame wasn't killing it, just slowing it down. We can make it to the water, Richard yelled at her. Come on! Fight it in the water? Are you mad? She yelled back. Got a better plan? She looked up again. Yes, get it over to the mast after I'm up. The mast was tall enough that she thought she could see where it scraped the roof. She hoped that the small metal bars sunk into the wood weren't too damaged. Climbing had never been her forte. She grabbed the pillar and tried to pull herself up, hoping the creature wasn't too close to her yet. The gloves slid, unable to give her the traction she needed. Swearing, she threw them to the deck and grabbed the mast again, her spine tingling in disgust at the feeling of moist fungus under her hands. It felt like wet fur that melted under the pressure of her hand. She nearly let it go, but reminded herself that the mold couldn't kill her just from touching it. She would worry about how it could kill her when she wasn't fighting something that could. She grabbed the first metal bar and pulled herself up, grabbing for the next as soon as she was high enough. She missed it and had to steady herself before she could reach again. All she could think was that she had to climb faster. Be faster. It was so dark. How long could the fire below burn? Her heart skipped a beat when her foot slipped before her hand had caught the next rung. She hissed as her leg caught on the metal bar, ripping down its length. She grabbed the metal bar under her hand. Her shoulder ripped, and she knew she'd pay for the fall later. But for now, her hand held. She looked down, her heart beating so fast and hard that it might burst from her chest. She was nearly 30 feet up. She took a deep breath, wincing at the pain in her shoulder. Her hands screamed with the abuse that she was putting them through, and her leg itched as though it had never itched before. She shivered, imagining the fungus moving toward her leg, creeping towards the bloody gash. Kazunaha bit her lip and took a deep breath, setting herself to climbing again. Richard was depending on her. She'd just reached the top when the last of the light from the deck flickered out. The next few moments as her eyes adjusted were brutal. Nothing but that undulating hum, getting higher and higher in pitch. Just as she started to make out the stalactite directly in front of her, Richard swore. Kasunaha, I'm blind! What are you doing? Climb the pole! I can see enough to do what I need to. Richard swore again, and she heard him start to climb. She needed to hurry. It took too long to find the crab in the dark, and she couldn't see the deck. She was so high up. Twisting so that she was on the same side as the creature, she reached out for the nearest stalactite. Her fingers didn't do enough, and she took out the sword, not caring if she destroyed it. She had to save Richard. The sword bit into the rock, better than she thought it would have. The stone above was weak, more like hard earth. She sliced and stabbed, determined to make it fall, ignoring the feeling of dirt falling into her hair. She heard Richard yell and looked down. Even she could hardly see in the gloom, but he kicked and climbed higher. He had to be 10 or more feet off the ground, and it could still reach him. She slammed the stone once more. It sank in, tearing out chunks as she thrust, but as soon as she pulled it back, she could feel the hilt of the weapon disintegrating under her. She thought it was only staying attached because of the material wrapped around it. Swearing, she sheathed the weapon and attempted to kick the stone the rest of the way off. The mast shuddered under her, and she almost slipped again. Her heart pounded, but she felt the stone move. She braced herself on the mast and kicked with both legs. The stone snapped and fell, strangely silent, until a moist cracking sound reverberated through her skull. The creature below shrieked, and the masts shuddered again. Her heart hit her stomach, and she heard the stone above her shriek, matching the creature below. The mast began toppling, and she saw the deck come up to meet her. She wound her arms and legs tightly around it. When the mast hit, it threw her loose like an angry storm would a sailor. She bounced off the floor and back into the mast. The floor cracked under her when she landed on it again, dropping her into the water. She coughed fluid, and suddenly there was light and sound all around her. She screamed as the world went frighteningly dark. Richard! Good chapter! Good chapter! Okay, let me just mark our place and put the book away. Perfect. Oh, okay, I may not have been excited before I started recording, but my gods, I love this chapter. I know, I say that almost every chapter, but this one specifically because I can nearly see the entire fight, where everyone is moving, and the terrifying creature that they were facing. It was one of the best chapters I'd ever written at the time. And while I may have surpassed it with some of my newer chapters in Lord's Curse and the new one I'm editing, I really have to admit that this is still one of my favorites. And I hope it's one of yours too. If you've made it this far, please like the video. And if you want to see more of what I do or get notified when I go live, please consider subscribing. I should be going live on Sunday again. And while I don't think we're going to be playing Genshin Impact, I am definitely hoping to come back with good news on having Yaimiko when I spend my wishes. What I do think we're going to end up doing is maybe creating a new outfit on Vroid, or at least for Vroid. Maybe something I could put up on my booth page? I don't know what yet. If you have a suggestion, please let me know in the comments below. I hope to see you tonight on Twitch or here on Sunday. Take care of yourselves until then. Bye.